All right, we got Matt Miller from ESPN. And Matt, first and foremost, congratulations for now being with ESPN.
Thank
well
you.
deserved. I know you do draft scouting. Your life is pretty much predicated on draft scouting. And now we're at the 2021 and 2022 NFL Combine. Let you know what year I'm in.
Right.
You finally have had an opportunity to see some of these guys work out and do some bench press and everything. What has been your thoughts on this year's Combine so far?
No, I think, number one, it's just great to be back watching this happen in person after not being here last year. I think that's a huge part of it, especially, the 2 years of not being able to go to college games. I think people forget that for a lot of these prospects, this is their first exposure to some of these coaches, decision makers, definitely to the media, especially if you're an underclassman that wasn't at the Senior Bowl. This is your first shot at that, right? Your first impression. So I think that's a huge part of it. I came into this week kind of down on this draft class. I'm not going to lie to you guys about it. I was like, it's kind of hard to sell this draft class. Now that I'm here, like the momentum gets going a little bit. You start getting excited about it again. So I think, we're going to see good numbers here, especially, 43-cone vertical jump that gets a little bit more excitement going for this class.
Well, like yourself and a lot of other people, when it comes to the 12th overall pick, a pass rusher or a cornerback is the primary target for the Vikings. When you start looking later in the draft, 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds, any positions of need stand out to you?
Well, I think the wide receiver group is amazing, as always. Like, that's becoming a constant, right? But I do think wide receiver is very, very deep this year, as is running back. Obviously, you guys have a pretty good one, right? In Dalvin Cook. His brother is in this draft class. I don't know if you guys have heard about that. But also, it is a good year to start looking at not only backfilling your roster a little bit, but just kind of churning the talent underneath, especially with a new front office, a new scheme coming in on both sides of the ball. I think you start to look for those players, especially at receiver, corner, like you mentioned, where you can get athletes that you can maybe coach up a little bit into your particular scheme and fill your roster out that way. I think that's something that we've seen, that analytics style front office work very well at doing that. I think that's what Minnesota will do a great job with.
For you, draft scouting, you've been doing it for a while now. How has things started to change now with not targeting, but NIL deals and transfer portal? How has that changed the trajectory of your scouting process?
I think it makes it harder to remember where a guy played, number one, right? Keeping track of, Quinn Ewers is not at Ohio State, he's at Texas, and remembering small details like that. But I also think, we're dealing with professionals, on a true level. And I think it gives those players access to, private training even earlier. It's not just at the quarterback position anymore. It's offensive linemen, it's pass rushers. So I think we're getting prospects that are more well-rounded. Not only are they getting great coaching at the universities, but now they're smarter about, sleeping right, eating right, working out right. So I think we are truly getting a more professional prospect than we were getting when I started doing this, 12 years ago.
You talked about the quarterback position. Kirk Cousins still on the roster. We have a backup in Kellen Mond, Sean May. We don't know if he's going to come back or not. Should the Vikings still be looking at a quarterback in this draft class?
I think so. I'm from that old school where you draft a quarterback like every other year, just in case, right? The old Green Bay, Ron Wolf model of might as well, right? And it means no disrespect to Kirk. It means nothing about Kellen Mond. It's about why not take a chance on a guy like Jack Cohn late in the draft just to see if there's something there, or Bailey Zappi in the mid-rounds. Washington took Kirk Cousins as mid-round pick, and it worked out very well for Kirk, obviously. So I think that's a position that, especially when your starter is a little bit of an older guy, you always have to be thinking ahead, just in case. Like you want that Jimmy Garoppolo situation where you have a guy that you can now, maybe develop and trade even.
Yeah, that's a good point. You see a lot of teams doing that. I feel like that's the new wave of what teams are trying to do.
They want to, at least, right?
Exactly.
Everybody wants to.
Exactly. I mean, salary cap, that has a lot to do with it, but looking at the salary cap for this Vikings team and what they're trying to acquire and bring in, have you had any discussions with Kwesi or Kevin, or have an idea of what their mindset is going forward?
I haven't had any personal discussions. Hopefully, at 2 a.m. at one of these fine establishments in Indy, we'll be able to do that. But I do think that it is going to be a different approach, obviously, from what Rick was doing, and more, I think, smarter spending about trying to spread the wealth a little bit instead of I think a pitfall a lot of teams have fallen into is let's pay 5 or 6 guys and then not pay anyone else, basically, and it's not sustainable. We saw Seattle do it, Kansas City has done it, and hasn't really been they've been good but not back to a Super Bowl. So I think that'll be an interesting philosophy to see how it works in Minnesota.
Gotcha. We'll get you out of here with this. If you had the 12th overall pick and you were the Minnesota Vikings, who would you select?
Oh, man. In a perfect world, is Derek Stingley Jr. there? So I'm a risk taker, apparently, right? I would gamble on Derek Stingley because I remember watching him as a freshman, and he was the best corner in college football as a true freshman. I know he's had some downtime in the last 2 years, but he should be well rested after only playing 10 games in the last 2 years. But I still think the sky's the limit for him. And if you get coached up and he gets in a scheme, Ed Donatell's scheme, I think would be great for him. He could be the best corner in football in a very short amount of time. The talent is absolutely there.
Love it. Matt Miller, appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yep.